Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
It's back, brother. I got Freedom Variant gear on back from when they were threatening mandates every single day. So I was like, I got to change my name back to the Freedom Variant.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I bought this with the first unemployment check that I have ever gotten in my life, thanks to being shut down by the government.
Yeah.
So I bought shirts with it. I was slightly more responsible than my 16-year-old daughter, who was also getting $600 a week for a $50 a week job. Like
what a deal that was.
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
Yeah.
And if I got that when I was just like working making pretzels at like 16 years old, like,
could you imagine? My God.
But
anyway.
So speaking of the government giving out money, we're going to talk about FEMA today.
Yeah, let's do it.
And we're probably going to spend a good chunk of the show on it. We might resume for the WYSL audience our debate about prescription drugs. We'll see if we get to it.
Dude, I have so much stuff. Your mind is going to be blown. You're just going to be like, nope, Tim, you're right. I concede. I concede how this works now.
Maybe I'll keep an open mind. I've been reading a bunch, and there's plenty to be mad at the government for. In terms
oh my
of
God, yeah,
stuff like there's plenty. I really don't think like just importing drugs from other countries is actually the solution. Like that's like the thing. I just don't. I think that's the only point we'll disagree on. Like the other stuff and the ways the government screws up the pharmaceutical world.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, man, we're probably on board with like 80% of that.
I think that if we get into it, well,
yeah,
I'll explain.
Yeah,
we'll allow me to expand on that because I know that's. I get it that there's a bone of contention, something that needs to be hashed out further, and I don't anticipate necessarily winning this argument, but I do anticipate making everybody that listens to my side of it think just a little bit more about how this stuff works. You know what I mean?
That's what we try to do on A Free Solution. That's right. That's the goal, to think and to think of other ways that we can have a freer, better world.
All right. God, man, that's beautiful.
I know, right? Like what a segue into the show mission.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So on that note, we are going to get started in 15 seconds. And if you have other stuff to talk about, y'all know what to do. You're pros at this point.
Put the comments and post your links, ask your questions. Kevin and I are here for it, man. We're here for it.
Let's go.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. I'm back. It's back to the Freedom Variant. I mean, I do kind of like the name, the least of many evils, because I can drop it anywhere. Like people are like, who do I vote for? I'm like, well, vote for me because I'm the least of many evils. And look, it's worked so well for us. But anyways, I belabored that joke a few times on this show. So like, let's get into making fun of FEMA, brother. What do you say?
Yeah, we're going to talk about FEMA because FEMA has a very, very important job to do right now. We, of course, have the continued aftermath of Hurricane Helene and soon to be landfall, if not already, Hurricane Milton down in Florida.
Yeah, it was supposed to be hitting landfall. I haven't seen a lot of news about it.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Soon. And like WYSL, you're listening to this on Thursday, so it's going to be. We'll see what happens in the next day. But obviously that's a serious storm, and I grew up down that way, not on the west side of Florida, like Tampa area where it's going to hit, but on southern Georgia. I've had to evacuate a couple times for hurricanes, but like. We never lost our house. We never had anything like all that serious happen, but we have had that moment. So my thoughts are with the folks who are down in Florida who like, okay, let's pack up everything that like can't be replaced by insurance, kids, pets, photos, stick it in the car and try to just get as far inland as possible.
Yeah.
And then, you come back to whatever's left, right? And then hopefully, you are prepared yourself, or people around you can help you if you get in a bad situation, or maybe the federal government comes in and helps, right? And that's a lot
Sure.
of people make that final assumption that the federal government is here to help. They're going to come in with a bunch of resources and tools and logistics, and they're going to make sure that everything is okay. That's certainly what people hope for in situations like the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina and the aftermath of Hurricane Helene in like North Carolina and Tennessee. And unfortunately, that hasn't quite happened. I want to get into why and what's going on with that. And
Well, it's a massive federal bureaucracy, Kevin, and that's I think what people take a look at is how much money gets spent on FEMA, what their total budget is, and it's some astronomically absurd number. It's under the
13 billion.
13 billion, and it's under the control of that
Oh,
Mayorkas
sorry, no,
guy.
13 billion was carried over from last year. They had 36 billion in new appropriation, so 13 plus 36,
All right, so there
49
you
billion.
go. But they don't they're running out of money, Kevin. That's the thing. They need the Republicans to get back in session and write them a check right now. That's what Mayorkas is saying. Even though in July he said exactly the opposite and said we're fully funded and we are prepared for like extreme high heat. We're prepared for the hurricane season that's ahead of us. Like I think part of what causes people to freak out is the narratives that are being handed down to us from large bureaucracies that it becomes unclear what their mandate is actually is. And
Right.
if they're successful at achieving that mandate, how would we even know? Because we don't know how to judge them. We don't know what their mandate is. So
Right. I mean, they
that's the thing.
certainly have like a mission, right? Like of what they're supposed to be doing. Which is like it's kind of named the FEMA Federal Emergency Management Agency, right? Like they're supposed to be there to uh help in the immediate aftermath of disaster and help rebuild areas and provide like the emergency relief, right?
Sure.
Okay. So, and in some situations like what happened in North Carolina and the Appalachia, right? Like some of the stuff like it just comes out of nowhere. So, I get like people didn't expect the level of flooding to happen in that place, right? So a lot of
It's
people
high
weren't prepared.
ground,
It's
right?
high ground. You're in the
Yeah.
mountains, for goodness sakes, right? Like you don't expect that, right? So people like again, some people are like, oh man, how are they not prepared? I'm like, man, they lived in the mountains. They're not on like again, like I live down coast of Georgia. Like I get it. Like you sort of that comes with the territory. You expect it, right?
Sure.
You don't expect it in Appalachia.
Correct.
You
We don't
know,
expect it in upstate New York. And
no, you
about
don't. But it
90
happens.
when was it? I've got to say it was at least 10 years ago. Boy, no, it was closer to 17 years ago, Kevin, now that I think about it. We had a hurricane condense over our area in the
Mhm.
month of October, literally dropped 10 inches of rain in an hour, and then another 10 inches of rain over the course of the next 2 days. It wiped out roads. It cut
Yeah.
people off up in the hills. It was, in fact, wild. Like the Freedom variant was out driving his truck, even though like the roads were closed and I could get by because I had 4-wheel drive and I had to go out and do estimates and stuff like that. But like it was quite a sight and
Yeah,
roads
right.
were literally washed out.
Yeah, in some places, yeah, roads just disappeared, right? Like not
Oh,
passable,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
And so, like, I say all this too, like in this situation, to say, like, yes, the problem is logistically challenging, right? Because, like, what do you do when roads are just gone, right? Like, how do you get in? And that's where, like, the people who are the locals are going to be the ones who are going to like quickly be able to say, okay, this road's washed out. I'm going to be able to go around elsewhere. The outside folks from FEMA aren't necessarily going to know that, and the cell towers are out. And like I know they have like other forms of GPS, but like it's harder to get around, and getting stuff to these places is difficult. So FEMA has a tough job, and the logistics of trying to respond to these types of disasters hasn't improved all that significantly since the days of Hurricane Katrina, where they frankly failed to prepare that, specifically the city of New Orleans, but like quite a few other areas in the Gulf Coast as well, prepare them effectively for the hurricane, and then deal with the aftermath in a timely and effective manner.
Yeah.
And there's inquiries about it, and like, commissions and blah blah blah, like all these sort of reviews of the situation. And despite the budget of FEMA continuing to climb, we see that it still wasn't quite prepared to quickly respond to this type of emergency.
Well, one of the things they have to do is have Zoom meetings about how to effectively allocate the money for. They want to make sure the money gets. Look, I see stuff on the internet. I don't know if it's true, but it's just
But
it's
all
just the
right.
kind of thing that's perfect to talk about on the radio show. They have a 5-person DEI meeting about how to make
Right.
sure we distribute the funds appropriately, and it's like, okay, fire 4 of those guys, keep the sign language interpreter, and all of a sudden, FEMA is drastically more efficient. So
Yeah, right. I mean,
I'm just
like to me,
saying.
it's like, okay, like if there's an actual problem with, certain groups not getting money, okay, yeah, that's fine. That's not great. Like everyone should get help, right? That's what
Sure.
the federal government's supposed to do. Certain people aren't getting money. Okay, figure out a way to make sure they get money, resources, food, water, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know if you need like a whole DEI staff person to
It
to, to do that, or several,
It's
or a
just
team.
endemic of the system that we live in that a meeting like that had to take place. And unfortunately, not even unfortunately, somebody got a hold of it and broadcast it. And it's like, okay, the reality is what FEMA's best at is handing out money after the fact. Like this
Right.
$750 emergency grant is not the limit of what FEMA is going to
No,
do for these
and
people.
actually, like I see a bunch of people say that, like, oh, they could only give people $750 because some of that was spent on like the illegal aliens. I'm like, no, that's not really what happened there. Like, yeah, there's some of that stuff going on, but like, it's not why they didn't hand out more money immediately in like North Carolina.
Yeah,
Well, and we can get into that because I know you and I talked about it on Twitter a little bit.
we
Oh
did.
man, but let's see if I can get my video back in a second. But like with the $750 thing, it's just that's like immediate cash needs, like go out and like try to buy food and like get water and stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's what that's for. And that kind of makes sense to me. All right. Like what money can we give away with basically asking no questions? Okay, $750. That's fine. That's something for people to like get through for a few days. But like they'll do other things, like they're supposed to have shelters, they're supposed to have like money to rebuild your house. Like that's fine. Like to me, like the way FEMA could help more is to get money to like know what local agencies, like, and it doesn't have to be government. Things like the Cajun Navy can be like a designated agency too. Like know who to give resources to, who's gonna like know how to get people to the right place and actually help. Right.
Well, yeah, that's where they come in and the first thing they try to do is set up a bureaucracy to figure out who's. It's like that's a time when we trust each other, right? So if FEMA can bring 10,000 gallons of gas to that place and start dishing it out, that would be way more effective than what's going on right now, where they're like coming in, limiting people's access to go on rescue missions, limiting
Mhm.
people's access to like they come and
Yeah.
take charge when that's not what they should be doing. They should come in
Yeah.
and offer support to the people that are already there. They were even interfering with like launching Starlink receivers and stuff like that. It was just like a little bit of absurdity. And I'm sure they're up to speed now, or at least more up to speed now. But they were
Yeah,
like,
hopefully. But I know
yeah, well,
there's yeah, it was a they got a lot of heat, and I think sometimes deservedly so, for like kind of coming in and like not having a sense of urgency, and like and not being in a hurry to help people when like at that time there's still people, like literally still people like trapped on
right.
mountainsides, unable to like leave their homes. Like, okay, like yeah, that's a time to like move along pretty quick. And maybe that's not a fair example, but like I saw a few of them and I'm like, God, Yeah, like you got to look like there's some urgency in that situation. And then, and I don't know if you saw this. Like, I think I retweeted a story about this, like the helicopter pilot who was trying to help people and was told, like, no, you can't go and fly more missions now. And
Yeah.
there's like community notes under this being like, oh, but like there's like, federal aircraft in the area trying to get supplies. I'm like, man, like this guy was like a professional pilot. Like, you know what he was doing. Like,
He was freaking out. I heard him give a long-winded
yeah,
rant about they had already flown hundreds of missions and already had
yeah.
delivered thousands and thousands of pounds of like relief supplies to people,
Mhm.
pinpointed where people were literally trapped and isolated, and helped get rescue teams to them if they didn't in fact use the helicopter to pick them up and bring them out. And there was no need for a petty tyrant bureaucracy to get set up to interfere with what that guy was doing. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. Give that guy 1,000 gallons of gas. He had already taken thousands of gallons of gas out of his pocket and out of his business to make this thing
yeah,
happen. And it's
yeah.
like
And look,
that's a problem with the federal government, bro. It's
no, 100%.
absurd.
And because look, I see these disasters, and most of the time, most people are awesome. Most people are like that guy if they have the means to be like that guy, right?
Sure,
Like
absolutely.
they want to help people. Some people are in bad situations, they can't help, or they are the ones who need the help. But most people, if they have the ability to do so, are going to try to help out their neighbors, the people in their community, if they have the opportunity to. And that's great. Like that makes me feel good about humanity. And then there's the petty bureaucrats, the little people who are just like, no, you can't do that because the rules say so.
Right. We
What?
they're even like, oh, don't self-mobilize to the site. And it's like, all right, look, just relax. We've got a hot comment out there that I want to cover.
Yeah,
Uh, our buddy Repenter Byrne comes in from X. What do you guys think of the political posturing around this issue? Uh, Personally, it makes me extremely sick from both sides. I'm with you.
yeah,
Arguably, I even think that the desire to force the Republicans to come back and write a spending bill is political gamesmanship right now. When we
yeah.
know there's discretionary funds available. I have an article that says there's FEMA has billions of dollars right
No,
now.
yeah, they should be good. I mean, this is we've talked about this. This is what federal agencies do, right? Like, oh, another emergency, one happens right after the other. Will help that more money, right? Like that's just like reflexive.
Yeah,
Um, and it's
absolutely. And look, that may be an answer, but I to use it as a political tool right now when the goal is to get boots on the ground and people help is like the whole process of it is absurd to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it
so,
doesn't help
yeah,
that
there's
it's an
that side
election
he's
year, right?
doing they're doing that, it's election season, people are gonna do that type of stuff, and we don't have to like it, but it's just a reality, and then so there's that stuff, that posturing coming from the Democratic side, and then there's the Republican side who are like, FEMA is out of money because they're giving it all to the illegal immigrants,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
what Trump's saying, and look,
Sure.
if you're making that argument, and I've seen some libertarians make arguments like that, like, "Oh, they're giving money away to illegal migrants, and that's why FEMA doesn't have money." You're making the argument that, like, we can just fix the problem by giving this organization more money. Like, that's how, like, the
Uh,
statist folks will hear it. Like, "Oh, we gave some of the money over to migrant sheltering. We'll just that was $650 million. We'll just add another $650 million to the big FEMA like disaster relief pot, and then everything will be good. Like it's
no,
fine. We
so
can always fix this problem with more spending."
that's a great way to look at it. My take is always this, Kevin. So it's always the government is never forced to make hard choices. Its
Yeah,
obligation is apparently to simply spend itself and spend our children's future into oblivion. So that's all they ever really do. I would like the notion that the government is making choices and that we as the people that pay taxes, as the people that hire these people to do our job, the people that they are purporting to serve, understand that they need to make choices about the future. So that's how I
right.
always see that stuff. I don't get like caught up. I got caught up in a tweet that I thought was kind of an interesting juxtaposition. I don't think we want to talk about that right now because that's inside baseball stuff. But
Yeah,
I think people are mad about like, okay, now we have $175 million going to Lebanon where we're paying for rockets to blow up people in Lebanon, and now we're going to send $175 million in humanitarian aid. And we have Mayorkas saying FEMA is out of money. And it's like, that kind of thing is like, okay, yeah, it's not the same agency, but it's sophistry to say that these are choices that should be made. These are hard choices that they're completely irresponsible with money. That's the point that always has to get
the government home. The government's wildly irresponsible with money anyway. Like to me, my point on that, some of that stuff is like, I can compartmentalize some of these things, right? Like,
sure,
all these different decisions can be like separately stupid or like ill-advised, and it doesn't necessarily mean like that should impact how we think of FEMA, right? Like, I think we can think of these things individually and decide, are they good or bad? Because like the government will find ways to fund these things if you really think they're good, or maybe we should all like look at some of this stuff and say like, maybe we don't need to spend this much money because now the amount that we're paying just to service the debt has gone up. Like, I had an article open about it. It's like 18% this year. It's ridiculous. Right. Excuse me, 34%.
That's absurd. Like, that's absurd. But don't worry, we can monetize our way out of this. Like, it'll be fine. Right. Everything's gonna be fine.
Well, that's monetize the way out of it. Trump says like we can just grow our way out of it.
Yeah,
we can't.
Same thing.
We've got to. I think we might have to just be like responsible. Someone needs to be the adult in the room.
That ain't gonna get anybody elected, bro. I just want to be honest with you.
I mean, we got Chase Oliver out there being like, let's be responsible about the debt, and no one cares. Like, no one cares at all. It's like, I wish they did. Like, I'm like, yes, that's the message that resonates with me, but like zero other people. Not zero. Folks listening to this show, I'm sure, are like, yeah, that is a serious issue.
He has some messaging that resonates with me. He does, Kevin. I retweeted some stuff that he posted about the Palestinian war, the Israel Gaza conflict, the wars overseas. I reposted some of that stuff. It's just occasionally he rubs me the wrong way, and that's how that goes.
we won't get too into it. He did have a really great tweet about FEMA, which if my phone didn't die, I would read. But just talking about the specific ways in which they're incompetent, we need to just kind of devolve that back to states or nonprofit organizations, because that's really one thing that we could do about this. And so when we come back, we'll maybe extend this topic a little bit further. Keep talking about some of the alternatives to like, a federal emergency system and other ways in which we can be more effective at helping out when disaster strikes. All right. So thanks again for joining us here on Free Solution on WYSL. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
Do not let me go without explaining to everyone that this is all Jimmy Carter's fault.
It's all Jimmy.
It's all Jimmy Carter's fault, man.
Man, I swear, like the young boomers, older Gen X generation, like just hates Jimmy Carter.
Oh, I think it's always like this. It's always like, what a great humanitarian since, he left the presidency, but his presidency was like absurd. It was the most depressing time of most of our adult lives, Kevin. Like, it was literally everything was like, we're going to run out of oil. We're going to freeze to death. Like, the misery index is absurdly high. Like you need to wear a sweater. You need to keep your thermostats below 67. Nuclear war is right around the corner.
Thermostat doesn't even work.
It's like, it was nonstop depressing rhetoric from that guy, and it was like,
that's like, it was the vibe at the time. It's like the whole Paul Ehrlich thing. Like, oh yeah, we'll run out of resources. We're going to die. We need to, like that was like the vibe at the time. And then all the capitalists eventually.
That's another one. Thanks for reminding me of that one.
Yeah.
My
right.
God. The Malthusian mindset.
And eventually the like, hey, we can grow and be awesome crowd, like kind of joined the Reagan coalition, and then the 80s happened and some things got a bit better. Not everything. There's still a bunch of problems, but like just that
I still say that like the left should just embrace supply side economics, because they were able to capitalize on that to grow a parasitic class like faster than it had ever been grown in the history of man. So even faster than Woodrow Wilson when he instituted the the income tax. It's like,
so I mean the actual plan, you know, and some of this I like the abundance agenda folks, like look up those folks, because some of it crosses over with libertarian policy solutions, but their whole deal is basically like, we can grow and be awesome and do great things, and we need to do it in two ways. One, deregulate a whole bunch of stuff, and two, spend a boatload of money.
yeah,
So like, you
They're
have
like,
you have me for part of that there. If we can
God,
do one of those things, yes.
yeah,
Spending a bunch of money, like, but the whole argument on spending a bunch of money is basically that, hey, the reason why the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act don't really work all that well is because there's so much regulation bogging stuff down that, like, all that money that we spend is just going into the hands of bureaucrats instead of actually being used for something useless. In fact, there's something I retweeted today or yesterday. It took a company $500 million just to get through the regulatory process to start building a nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
Before shovels hit dirt,
yeah.
$500 million. Absolutely bonkers.
Wheels got to get greased, Kevin. You know, like consulting firms have to be consulted. You know what I'm saying? Like engineers have to be engineering. Like questions have to be answered. Sites have to be picked. People have to be paid off.
I mean, some of those things are true. You do need to have plans. You do need to have engineers involved to make sure it's all going to work, right?
Mhm.
It probably shouldn't take $500 million before you start building anything.
It's
Just
like
to,
the
like,
high-speed
get the
rail
bureaucrats.
fiasco in California. It's like,
Yeah, it's
what we
exactly
need
that.
is more money. It's like, you haven't built very much railroad yet. It's like, yeah, but if we have more money, like, it's going to be a huge success. It's going to be great.
And that's what, like, I can agree with the neoliberals on part way, because they're like, you know, hey, you're just spending a bunch of money, like, paying bureaucrats to, like, sit around and, like, submit new permits instead of actually building anything. Something's
correct.
broken here.
That's the system.
But let's see. Yeah, Jimmy Carter just has like 100th birthday.
He did.
And Betty's defending him. Yeah, if Jimmy wasn't on his deathbed, he'd be out there with a hammer rebuilding these places hit with hurricanes. You know he would. Habitats for Humanity.
Yep.
He does great stuff. And I will defend Jimmy Carter's
Absolutely.
presidency in a couple ways, which is, one, he deregulated the beer industry, made it possible for craft beer to emerge. He also deregulated.
Yeah. That was nepotism, bro.
It's just for Billy Bear. That's what it was.
Nepotism.
Hey, you know what? That's fine. Sometimes nepotism, like, serves libertarian ends.
That's right.
But he also helped deregulate airlines. That was another good thing. So those are at least two nice things that happened during the Jimmy Carter presidency, amongst a bunch of terrible stuff too.
Yeah. So look, Jimmy Carter was my original come to awareness that we craft imagery and lie about human beings. Okay. Like Jimmy Carter and his family landed gentry for generations, descended from slave owners, right? It's like this loving peanut farmer. That was nonsense. They were into pork and hogs and commodities. Okay. And he was wildly wealthy, generationally wealthy, and he was like, maybe he was humble, but like the notion that he was like Mr. Peanut, but the president of the United States, was absolute nonsense. Okay. Like, that's it. He was a wealthy dude who became president, and the narratives were amazing.
Yeah. But
just amazing.
Tells a good story, and that's the important part.
That's, well, yeah, the vibe. Kevin, the vibes are what count. Like,
all right. Patty wants to say, I'm not defending his presidency, became a great man in my eyes after. Fair enough.
Thank you, Patty.
We'll get to a couple more of these comments. Actually, I think we can save a couple of these for the show.
That's what I was hoping to do. Yeah, there's a
so
couple.
We'll get back into the show in like 10 seconds, and then we'll read some of these comments. All right, let's go. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and we're talking about one of my favorite subjects. I'm literally obsessed with pointing out the inefficiencies and the petty tyranny of huge bureaucracies that a lot of them were created by Jimmy Carter. I mean, I just want to make sure everybody knows.
Was FEMA also a Jimmy Carter thing? I didn't think so.
1979, bro. Jimmy Carter created the Federal Emergency Management Administration or something like that. So it's like,
Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Whatever.
But yes, no, that's pretty close.
More like an administration, They're like a shadow government running things behind the scenes with an unlimited budget, like the CIA.
CIA. A bunch of people do get like real paranoid about FEMA, and they're like, I remember like because there's like some like the FEMA camp stuff, and there's like, oh, they're gonna like just put everyone in coffins. I'm like, well, yeah, FEMA does have a bunch of like body bags and stuff because like in disasters you need places to put bodies. Like it's not like you think about it for 2 seconds, it's fine. Like the thing that makes me mad about FEMA is usually like the lack of logistical expertise in a lot of situations, and like the huge amounts of money spent that aren't necessarily always like directed well, or not even directed well, don't always get to the right place. It ends up like getting wasted in a lot of situations.
Yeah. After Hurricane Sandy in 2012, as our friend Patty points out, they were set up a table at the local Home Depot and just be like giving people forms to fill out. Here, fill out this form. Well, we're gonna help you with the devastation to your property and stuff like that.
Right.
And they were just giving out $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 grants. So
right. And I mean that's and I sort of get that, right? Like okay, like I mean, there is, and this is the part where it's and it stinks because I know like a disaster is happening in Florida as we speak, but like part of it is we do incentivize people to build in high risk areas. This is not what I'm talking about in terms of like North Carolina. It's not high risk area, right? Coastal Florida, on the other hand, like there's a lot of government money that goes into that incentivizes people to build in places that are high risk. And they're like the insurance market in Florida is just, I don't know, it's a mess. And the only reason
too, like it's
it is. And like a lot of them are pulling out, and like what we're gonna see because of like disasters like this is like insurance companies are gonna pull out, and there's gonna be even more pressure to have the government like cover the insurance damage in flood zones, right? Like because there's we're just gonna grow the national flood insurance program. And that stinks because again, and I say this as someone who like again lived not right on the beach or anything, but like down in that area, and I get it. I have friends who live down there, but like if you're going to live right on the coast in Florida, where it's a high risk for these types of storms to happen, us in upstate New York should not have to subsidize that. Like that's part of it. So like part of it is, and this goes to like our government is oftentimes reactive and we want to help people who are in bad situations, right? But if we were proactive, if we had policy that made it so that we lowered risk, or at least made people bear their cost of that risk, then we would be in a better financial situation as a country, right?
Correct. Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I think about that all the time when I hear about insurance companies pulling out of Florida, and I'm like, you know what they're going to do? My insurance is going to go up so that they can still insure rich people living on beachfront property because they get slammed by hurricanes way more often than I do. And that, I think on some level, is what's already going on. Like, I think that's a real problem.
It's the right thing. But, and again, we incentivize it. We allow this type of thing to happen, and it ends up costing us a lot of money. And then FEMA has to come in and like help people out. And again, I'm not saying FEMA shouldn't help people out, right? Sure. Like when the home is destroyed, like the folks living down in Florida. But what I am saying is that it wouldn't be as expensive for FEMA to do that if we didn't effectively subsidize people building in high risk areas.
Yeah. I agree with you there. Like that's a certain reality of the risk socialism model of socializing risk, privatizing profit,
creates moral hazard.
Yeah, it is a moral hazard for sure. So our buddy Matthew, the AI musician out there,
it's gonna get to that comment.
That was a good comment, right?
Matthew on Facebook says, you don't find it amusing that you need to fill a form online to get money with no internet, and on top of that, what bank is open and what stores are open?
That's a good question, bro.
I mean, it's
really, really good question. So
that is
And look, that even speaks to the whole like keeping the whole Starlink kind of like Starlink access things grounded when people couldn't get at. They couldn't even get the free access to the
Right.
internet that Elon Musk was offering. So it's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, man. So it's a joke.
I
Right?
know. And yeah, there's again, ineffectiveness in distribution. And, because I look at these things and I just think like, man, like, I just wonder if there wasn't, well, and we'll get to this comment too. Jared on Facebook says FEMA can't let civilians fix this. They would be without a job. I mean, like, I think that's partially true because I
Yeah.
do think like, okay, like if it wasn't the expectation that FEMA was going to go and do this, right? How would other companies react to addressing a disaster, right? So a
Sure.
company like Amazon or Walmart, or like, again, Amazon, they're very, very good at logistics. I can't help but think like, okay, how does Amazon spin up like a bunch of drones to get aid to like disaster areas in a way that is going to be both like philanthropic and profitable to them? Because like it would probably be both, right?
Correct.
And
Sure.
that to me like is fine. And some people are like, ew, like Amazon's going to make a profit off a disaster. I'm like, if it means people get food and water, yes, that's fine. I'm totally okay with that. Like, it doesn't bother me. And I know some people like find
Liberals.
that I know, right? Liberals. No, but like because people talk about that and talk about like the price gouging stuff too, right? Like, oh man, like
Oh, God, that
you're
drives
gonna
me nuts.
increase the price of generators. I'm like, yeah, if there's only a handful of generators, then you should increase the price because you got three options, right? Like you either ration, you have shortages because people buy them up at like the lower prices, or you raise prices, and then the people who really, really need them will pay more because it's more valuable in that situation to go and get that stuff. And then you incentivize more people to come in because they hear that prices of generators have gone up 6x. Okay, there's some incentive to get some more generators in there. And I'm
Yeah,
fine
look,
with that. Like, I
Kevin,
mean, like my libertarian dystopian futures, like Amazon, like responds to that and starts droning in generators at like slightly marked up prices too.
bro, I
That
was
means people
on
get
my
generators.
yeah, I was on my way to my kid's college. Like he's going to school down in Virginia, and they had based on the whole hurricane blowing through, they had a problem at their water treatment plant, and they ran out of bottled water all over the whole entire area. The school had a store, like a supply that they were given to the kids 2 bottles per day, but like
Mhm.
they were then charging $6 a bottle. So I figured if I could load up my truck with like roughly 30 cases of water, I could have profited about, and let's just say I only got $4 a bottle. I could have profited about $600, but
You evil price gouger.
I
You
know,
would
but they
take
would have had
advantage of
water,
people in
right?
their desperation.
Yeah, well, I
Yes.
would,
And now
and I
granted,
would
the
have got to hang out with
alternative
my
is that
kid,
they get dehydrated, but
right?
like still, it's evil of you to make a profit off of
I mean, honestly, I probably would have got arrested and they would have confiscated my water because I was like some sort of evil price gouger, and I would have
yeah.
just been
Vice
like,
President Harris is like warning of cracking down on price gougers in this situation. And like to me, like again,
the,
it's one of these things that like it grosses out like liberals and some conservatives too. I'll see like some conservatives talk about too. It's like, wow, we need to like, you know,
crack
crack
down.
down on these price gougers and like these evil capitalists who are like just trying to take advantage of desperate people. And like this is how you get stuff to where it needs to go. It's prices. Like
It
this is
is
how it works. It works really, really well. Just let people like get a bit more in there, and then the prices are going to drop really quickly
well. The other
after
thing,
like
yeah, if there were 10 guys that did exactly what I was going to do, the price of bottled water would have got down to $2 pretty fast. Like
exactly. You're not
we
going to be
don't
able
want
to
to
move it. You got all the stuff down there. Well, I might as well recoup some of my money, right?
automatic bidding war, and I'd still get to hang out with my kid. And if I even just broke even if I just paid for my gas, like that would be the be all end all. Like
Right.
if or whatever, I still would have risked it for the biscuit. You know what I mean? Just because I could have made it all kind of work out. So,
Yeah.
but I didn't because I knew I was afraid, literally afraid that I would get arrested. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like somebody
Yeah, and
would,
it's messed up, right? Like
yeah,
it
it's
incentivizes people
absurd.
to not get supplies to where they need to go. Because again, especially if you're going to a place that's legitimately dangerous, right? Like that, like it's going to be a risk to get stuff in there. You should be compensated for that risk, and like bringing in supplies should be like something that like you make money off of. Like it's fine.
Absolutely.
Um,
Making
you get
money is good. I don't understand why people get so freaked out about it. Like,
yeah,
it's like,
it's fine. And if you don't like it, then like okay, like then don't
go
buy the
without.
stuff at the high price. Then go without, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
go without.
because you're going to be going without either way because some people it's like okay all the stores are going to be cleared out because all the stuff all the water that's at the regular price all the generators that at the regular price all the food that's at the regular price it's going to be bought up and there's no incentive to bring more stuff in when there's that much risk or like
Mhm.
actual logistical challenges right like if you
Sure.
got drone stuff in then yeah it's going to be
Should we utilize drones? Patty asks. Of course, we should utilize drones. We should
and I'm sure
utilize.
we already are in some
Yeah,
cases but
we should utilize every single possibility. And look, again, let's go to this whole price gouging myth. Like every single tool at our disposal could be utilized, right? And that would be fine. Now, a little piece of me understands FEMA wanting to control access to people that are living there, that are familiar with the area, and
yeah
to somewhat trained professionals, let's say, because there's lots of people that hike really well, and there's lots of people that were military trained that could go there,
no,
volunteer their time, or even FEMA could give them money. They'd be better off doing that. Like,
right. Well, so yeah, that is one way they'll sort of defend like some of the restrictions is that like you as a rando don't necessarily want to go down there and do stuff, right? Like you got to kind of know what you're doing because if you go down there and you drive onto an unstable road because you're somewhere where they've told you not to go and then you need to be rescued, that's like one more thing they have to worry about. It's not necessarily helping. So like because I've seen a bunch of people who like live down there, like, hey, if you want to volunteer, go with an organization that's like set up to do this like effectively, right? Like they'll
correct.
tell you how to go down here, get here safely, and like what you can actually do to help. Don't just drive in and like wander around and see if you can help.
Did you catch that Kamala Harris photo op, Kevin, where she was in helping to prep bags for people and like
Yeah.
they got like deodorant and toothpaste, and I was just like, that's my president. Smell better, Appalachia. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's
Like,
fine,
here you
like
go.
people want sanitation bags. I get it, but I'm like, I like these, like going and helping for like 20 minutes kind of feels a bit cheap to me. It's
Yeah. It was lame and it was fake. So based on those two things,
like every politician does it. I mean,
sure,
yeah, Trump
it's
did it like with the Puerto Rican hurricane where he's basketball tossing the paper towels. Do you remember that?
oh god, yeah, yeah. It hurts my memory, but yeah.
Yeah.
Because I like
But
Trump so much more than I like Kamala Harris. But yeah, no, that
so
he did exactly the same thing.
so this wild comment we're gonna leave for break because we have
All
to
right.
get we're gonna talk about the weather machines during the break. But I want to get to two like other serious policy solutions. So one is, as I say with every hurricane, repeal the Jones Act.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why
So
not?
and yeah, no, repeal the Jones Act. Again, just a reminder, like it is illegal if you take stuff that is from a foreign flag, foreign crewed, or foreign owned ship from, say, New York down to Florida after the hurricane to supply hurricane relief. That is illegal. And there
Illegal.
are people who will arrest and detain that crew for trying to get supplies to people just because it's flying the
Have,
wrong flag.
have they suspended the Jones Act yet? Because they generally suspend it every like natural disaster, just as one more argument that it should be repealed forever.
Yeah, they should repeal forever. I don't know if they've suspended it yet, but like almost every time they do. Um, so that's one. Two, and we've already talked about this a little bit. It's just to keep leaning on these private organizations. One really cool way that FEMA actually does this is and I'm trying to figure out if it's like official, but it's the Waffle House Index. Have
Okay.
you heard about this?
No, but I like it.
No, okay. So Waffle House is also very good at logistics, right? And they're kind of infamous for being open almost no matter what in a hurricane situation,
Okay.
right? So like there's a whole like color code of Waffle House Index. Um
All right. I saw something about it, but I didn't dive into the meat of the matter. So I'm looking forward
yeah.
to this.
So again, they're good at logistics because they try to stay open during these storms so that like first responders have like a place to go, charge their
Sure.
phones. Like so they bring in generators. They basically just become a whole gas powered store. They have hot coffee for everyone, right? So the Waffle House Index is basically like how how bad the situation is because if Waffle Houses like start closing,
It's bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad because
It's
most
bad.
of the time they'll be there's like closed, limited menu, and then like fully open, right? And
Right.
there's like a couple of in between.
Okay.
But
All right. That makes sense now. All right.
yeah, so Waffle House Index. But it's again, it's because they consider the logistics of running a business, remaining profitable while providing an essential service in a disaster area. So like Waffle House is a great example of like how private companies can and should run and respond to these disasters. And I wonder if FEMA had less of a role in this, if other corporations would provide a similar logistically like complex and effective way of being able to address disasters.
I think obviously it would. Like I think that human beings are wired to want to serve, especially small business owners are small and medium sized business owners are wired to serve their neighbors, right? And
Yeah.
one of the big things that interferes with that all the time is in fact the government, you know.
Yeah. And I
So
said, and these businesses are trying to do some of that, but I think the government is taking up that space. But on that note, we have to head to break. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. All right.
all right,
And
all right. So look,
All
the
right.
whole yeah, man.
We'll get to the weather machine thing.
I'm just saying, it's not so much that I think that they can control the weather, but like what better way to like seize the property of the richest lithium deposits and the silica quartz deposits in the entire world, than directing a hurricane at them and then eminent domaining all of their property. Like
Uh,
that's what's going to happen here, Kevin. Just like
That's
in
what's going to
Maui.
happen. That's
Yep.
just like in Maui. Did that
Just like,
happen in Maui? Yeah.
well, arguably people are saying that it's happened, but I did some research and they're building some houses there. Some of them are done. People were like, they
Yeah.
haven't built one house in Maui. And I'm like, all right, well, I got to double check that because before I run with something that radical that I can't quite back away from, I better get some facts. So they are kind of building some denser style 15-minute city type things, which kind of freaks me out. But
Yeah. I mean,
you know,
sometimes though, it's just like that's the better investment in a place where land is pretty scarce, right? It's
sure,
like,
sure.
you know,
People did lose their homes, and they are
yeah,
not getting them back.
yeah,
And
that's some of it.
so,
That's
and I'm afraid, like maybe time will tell. Human conscious has a short memory, like, and maybe Asheville, North Carolina, will become just one big silica mine. I don't know.
maybe. I mean, like, yeah, you've seen the pictures of that city. Like, holy cow, like
Yeah, it's
just
wiped out. It's wiped out.
wiped out. It's crazy.
So I'm just saying, I'm
No, I
not
mean,
sure
like,
that they can, but it
yeah,
makes sense that they would.
I'm definitely not on the it's a weather machine thing. I like it could happen in the sense that like this is an area that's going to take a while to rebuild, and like some of the ways in which it might be rebuilt is like like the different mining
Sure.
opportunities in the area, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, but hopefully it the people there are able to get some help to start rebuilding and rebuild like their whole complex economy. Like things built on economies built on like single resources tend to be like pretty unstable
Sure.
and impoverished, and it leads to some bad
West
stuff.
Virginia, if you will.
Yeah, West Virginia being one. I mean, like literally look up the history of like coal towns. And some of those places are bonkers.
Yeah.
Actual like corporate tyranny, like where I can like sort of be like, okay, commies, you actually have one example here of like
Uh,
capitalist tyranny. Like,
yeah. You work for $1, get paid a dime. That's why I do my pooping on a company time. Like, does, but the owe my soul to the company store. Like, that
yeah,
was a real
that's a real thing.
thing. You would work
Yeah.
all day, buy some food for your family, and go into debt. Like,
Yeah, totally inflated prices, which to me, like I look at that and I'm like, well, that's the danger of making sure that one entity doesn't own the town. There isn't like
correct.
in my mind all that much difference between a corporation and a government if like they have a monopoly of violence over you.
Yeah,
They're
for
just
sure.
they're just groups of thugs with different levels of legitimacy sometimes. So
Yeah, we got a House of Representatives guy from Texas who's literally bragging on the monopoly of violence that the government has. This Gene Wu, and we've talked about him on the show before because he was crowing and celebrating the fact that they had beat back some sort of school choice thing in Texas, and he had teamed up with a conservative. I don't know. Do you remember this? Where he had teamed up with a conservative, and they got together, and they're like, "Oh, let's stop this school choice thing in Texas." And the
yeah,
conservative was like, "Friday
I
Night
remember that.
Lights. That's why we don't want school choice." And I'm like, "Wow, you're a
Nostalgia.
psychopath, bro." And this Gene Wu was him, and
And
they
just
were like
dumb.
high-fiving each other on the internet. And anyways, this dude's all bragging up the whole notion of, hey, yeah, go ahead and don't pay your taxes and see what happens when you tell that to the judge that taxation is theft. And it's like kind of missing the whole point, bud. Like if you don't pay your
Mhm.
taxes, you get thrown in jail. That's
It's
why it's
true.
theft. Like that's why it's coercion. That's why it's extortion. You see what I mean? And he's getting ratioed hard, so I'm enjoying it.
Oh, it's fun.
Twitter's kind of fun.
Yeah.
X is
Yeah.
kind of fun.
And that actually is because this is the break too. I will say one thing about the Patty's weather machine thing.
Yeah.
It's I'm not saying this hurricane is any way created, but people are actually getting pretty good at like generating weather. Like remember the floods that happened in where is it? Is it UAE or Qatar or something? Where was it?
I
It's
want to
somewhere in the
just
Middle
dismiss it,
East.
Kevin. Don't feed the conspiracy theorists.
No. I know, but like it's like cloud seeding is a real thing, right? Like
For sure.
which can be like pretty cool. That's not what's happening here, but like
Maybe.
we are getting new ways of being able to like create weather. It's sometimes like again what happened in that Middle Eastern country was massive flooding because they overdid it.
Whoops.
Yeah, whoops.
That's the challenge.
That's Dubai. That's what it was. Thank you. I was like, I'm gonna like go through and name like the entire Arabian Peninsula here, but Dubai was the country where they did that, but ended up creating a bunch of floods. And yeah, I mean, there's interesting stuff with that because there's like efforts to like put different type of sulfurs in the atmosphere to like block out parts of the sun, the cool down
All of these
and
things sound wonderful. Like we set
yeah,
Canada on fire because last year was going to be hot down here in the States. So like we know they do it.
yeah. I mean, it's a thing that's like talked about, and I kind of err on the side of it's cool that like we are looking into geoengineering. However, we might not fully understand the consequences of how that's going to mess stuff up by doing it.
Well, weather's ultimate chaos theory. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the wings of a butterfly in southern Africa probably caused what happened in Asheville, North Carolina, or something like that. You see what I mean? Like I could see how it happens. It in my never mind.
Yeah.
I lost you there. That's good. Don't pay attention to that.
Yeah. Sorry. Just trying to look up something on Twitter. My bad.
No, that's okay. I was gonna vamp off on a joke, and I realized that the joke might not land, so I stopped in the middle of it, and I was hoping to dump it off onto you, but that didn't happen.
Sorry.
I do have the rumor page pulled up at FEMA now has a rumor page to dispel
Oh yeah,
some of the rumors going around. I could run through it pretty quick.
Yeah. All right. So we'll do that, and then we'll go to our final segment.
All right. Rumor: FEMA will only provide $750. You and I already covered that one. That one's false. FEMA is blockading people in Florida and preventing evacuations. FEMA says they don't have any control over the roads, which you know what they say about denying something.
Yeah. I mean, usually it's the state police who do that.
That's true, and FEMA does in fact point that out. Local law enforcement provides those services of blocking people in Florida, which I don't think happened, but okay.
No, yeah, I've been saying that again. I have several friends in Florida, and they seem to have started to get out if they were so inclined. Some people aren't, but
right.
The
lectern guy is weathering the storm. We're watching his tweets anxiously. Now Now, another rumor: FEMA only provides loans to disaster survivors, and in most cases, FEMA provides grants. I know
Yeah.
around here, um, for Hurricane Sandy, they provided grants, and I'll be perfectly honest, they did not do a lot of fact checking about the people that they were giving money to. So people were just going into the
Yeah.
Home Depot, filling out the paperwork, and getting
Yeah.
like,
It's like it's almost the opposite problem, actually.
yeah, yeah. So they're saying that's false. They do offer loans for some bigger issues or to get somebody back in business, things like that. Um, and occasionally, if your homeowner's insurance pays off or some other insurance that manages to pay you off instead of the grant, they will
Yeah.
ask you for their money back, or they will try to get that money from your insurance company.
Mhm.
So that to me makes sense, you know. Um, there's a rumor that applying multiple times for disaster assistance will speed up the process of being approved. Now, obviously, that's just people freaking out, and they just don't want people to apply multiple times. So they
Yeah.
also say that that is false. The FAA is restricting access to the airspace for the Helene rescue and recovering operations. Um, the FAA was doing some restricting. Um, this is real at first, and then they eased up those restrictions. Um, there is
Yeah.
some obligations to provide awareness of where, other big planes and helicopters are going to
Right.
be.
Yeah. I mean, if the army's flying a bunch of, helicopters in, right? Like
Yeah,
you gotta know, like, okay, don't. Yeah. I mean, like, ideally, there's pilots who like know what they're doing and they're checking for that stuff anyway. But
yeah,
I think it's possible to let other people fly rescue missions. Like, just get involved, tell them what's going on. We
y-
don't need to like just ground people who are capable of helping in an
which
emergency
which they
situation.
they did in
They
fact
did,
do,
yeah.
and this does not cover that. Um,
Oh yeah, there's a whole thing too with like Pete Buttigieg and Elon Musk talking together
I
too,
know
which is
that was really funny.
oh, they worked it out. It sounds like.
They did, yeah. Um, FEMA distributes aid based on demographic characteristics. Uh, that goes to the whole, Zoom call that got released from FEMA, which just proves to me that it's a massive bureaucracy that has too many people not doing anything. Um, and so, but they deny that they uh, distribute aid based on demographic characteristics. Uh, Arguably, I could be like, hey, I can almost buy the liberal in me can almost buy this like notion of, hey, some people might not ask for aid that are entitled to aid, and they may fit a certain demographic characteristic. So we've got to find a way to reach those people.
Right.
Um, I'm kind of okay with conversations like that. Pretty early in the process to be having a Zoom meeting about it. Let's just put that out there. Um,
Yeah.
FEMA is in the process of confiscating Helene survivor property. They deny this. Um,
They deny this.
they deny it, but
That's how you're phrasing it, huh?
yeah, well, yeah, because I don't know that. I mean, if you don't, they'll find lots of ways to seize your land if they want it, and it may or may not be FEMA that does it. So, there is property that has been, deemed non-livable in Maui that was formerly livable. I find that to be uncomfortable. Um, so FEMA is no longer accepting housing applications for housing assistance. They say they are.
Yeah.
FEMA does not have enough money to provide disaster assistance for Helene. FEMA has enough money right now for immediate response and recovery needs. If you were affected by Helene, do not hesitate to apply for disaster assistance. And FEMA is asking for cash donations and turning away volunteers. This is false, according to FEMA. They do not deal with the fact that there were allegations that they were seizing um, materials and commandeering materials for them to distribute. They didn't really deal directly with that rumor,
Yeah.
so I'm going to presume on some level that happened, and that they probably rethought their positioning there and
Yeah.
have.
Maybe. I saw something about that and I wasn't sure. I didn't comment on it because I'm like, I don't know if this is like some misunderstanding about whose actual like stuff it was. Like
Right.
I was a little bit unclear on it. Um
uh,
but anyway,
Yeah.
Are there any other myths that we need to dispel, Tim?
Nope, that was it.
Clear. All right. Thank you for our government propaganda hour
Yeah,
here.
you got it, buddy. You got it. I'm here. I'm here for FEMA. I'm the FEMA spokesperson on our show today.
Not officially, folks. He's joking. He's joking. Leave him alone.
I am just kidding. But still,
all right. Well,
I do think a lot of fluff gets tossed around with stuff like this, and it's okay that FEMA's trying to counter it. I do think that they're going to not give us, yeah, we did actually take a whole bunch of a truckload of water off a guy. Like they're not going to do that. They're not going to admit it. So
yeah, or it'll come out like 5 years later. And I'm like, oops.
We did do that. Sorry,
we did do that and did not ever compensate him.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's awkward.
Yep.
He was a price gouger.
It's a price gouger anyway. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Deserved it, honestly.
Yeah. The guy wanted cash for water.
Yeah.
What?
Water and food are a human right, Tim.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Wait. But if it's my water, it's my human right.
No.
No.
Greedy price gouger. Doesn't count.
Okay. That sounds right.
All right. Let's we'll do this last segment. We'll do do you want to do a pharmaceutical thing or we want to do something else?
Well, we could do the pharmaceutical thing. That one, I think, Kevin, I think that's like a full segment and a half. I got
right. We can wait till next time.
All right. But then what else do we have?
Evergreen topic.
I have a bit about a whale that I think is incredibly important, but it will not take up the entire 15 minutes. But the whale thing is important. We need to cover it for sure.
We need to cover the whale thing. Okay.
The beluga whale. Right. Yeah. It's got to get covered. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we could talk about that and I'll find something else to talk about, I'm sure.
All right.
Save us comment section. Give us topics to talk about because we're not going to talk about the pharmaceutical thing. Like
we're going to at our next show though. We're going to dedicate it.
Yeah, we got to do it. I know it's.
But the last segment of the day is not one for serious discussion of me trying to convince everybody.
That's a first segment thing. Yeah, for sure.
The fixed game scenario of big pharma.
All right. Yeah, I have to do that. Okay, so let's go in 2 seconds now. Right. Go. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, brother. I'm here. And look, I'm not exactly sure what direction to take this last segment of our show, but I've got some wildly important news about the Russian spy whale. Have you caught
the
any
Russian
of this?
Spy whale?
Yeah, the Russian.
No, I haven't. You said you had news about a whale, and honestly, I had no idea where this is going to go, which is a typical like Tim story. Like, okay, you're gonna pull something out of left field. Love it. I'm caught off guard. Tell me about it.
First of all, I got to give a shout out to our friend Patty, who makes me aware of some of the best news articles that I come across. But okay, there's this whale called Vladimir, who was recently turned up deceased. So this Vladimir was found in 2019, and he in northern Norway, and he was wearing like a camera harness. So basically, there was speculation, which I don't know. To me, it sounds real. But anyways, that this whale, this beluga whale that they named Vladimir Putin, was in fact a spy sent by Russia to collect information about Norway, I guess. So after a couple of fishermen freed him from this,
I believe it.
Yeah, they freed him from this camera harness. This whale just kind of kept hanging out with people and just showing up, and so it just kind of led credence to this whole thing that this guy was an agent of, well, I guess what the Kremlin, the KGB whale.
So here's the thing. military trained marine animals is a real thing.
See,
It's not like
Now-
it's not. I mean, it sounds like kind of a joke, but like it is a thing that actually happens, right? So like I see the story about like the the Norwegians and stuff, but like
Mhm.
I think definitely the Russian military, but I also think like the U.S. military has like used or at least tried to train like things like dolphins
yeah,
to do like mine detection and stuff because they kind of like they like hanging around boats anyway.
yeah.
Um,
No,
so
that
it's not totally like it's plausible. It's plausible enough. It could be that this is a spy whale.
okay. Well, now this is where it gets interesting, Kevin, because I found an article by Tom MacArthur of BBC News, dated September 9th, 2024, where Tom states in the headline, Russian spy whale was not shot, say police, which
Oh.
the denial that he wasn't shot only leads me to believe that he was shot. I honestly,
Well, that's how you approach all news stories. All right, the media and the government saying that he wasn't shot. Nah, they took him out.
yeah. So, arguably, a forensic examination has concluded that human activity did not directly lead to the death of the animal, which obviously means that human activity did in fact lead to the death of the animal. That's all I want to say about it.
It
That's
could
it.
be.
That's where I'm at.
Could
So,
be.
anyways, so long, Vladimir. They named him after Putin, obviously. You know what I mean?
Totally fair. Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so we did get a request to talk about another topic too, which is fair, and this person made the request in the last segment.
Sure.
Burn on X says, "I hope you guys address Israel today as the Middle East is burning. I understand that Israel has lost a ton of popular support, but is there any chance the next 4 years of U.S. foreign policy doesn't align directly with AIPAC's interests? Maybe I should hope for Kamala if I want that." What do you think?
Well, all right. So I was actually, with all due respect, trying to avoid what I consider to be a very serious, very long topic that honestly I think we could do an entire show
Yeah,
about.
we can, and we've done we've done several segments on Israel before. We haven't talked about the latest news, like the escalation with stuff in Lebanon, and I mean the U.S. kind of funding both the aid to Lebanon and aid to Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I made a joke about it, but it's real. Okay. So we're funding both sides of this conflict where we're sending in millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in humanitarian aid, and we're buying the bombs that are hurting these people. So this is, I, I understand that Israel has a right to exist. I understand that war is there's going to be casualties in war. I don't understand Israel's aggressive posturing, no matter how many different times it's explained to me in Gaza and now in Lebanon. These are Lebanon is arguably a more equipped of a military. They,
well, I
but
mean
not much
Lebanon is
more, right?
because it's not the war is not exactly against the government of Lebanon. It's against Hezbollah, which is
Right, a
not
terrorist
exactly
group.
it's a terrorist group that's
Sure,
not really officially the government of Lebanon, but they have a significant amount of influence there to the point where like they effectively own a separate territory in the southern part of Lebanon and then use that territory to shoot rockets
right, yeah.
at Israel, killing civilians or attempting to kill civilians in some cases. And a lot of that's funded by Iran, and yeah, it's messy, right? Like I guess
Right. So look to his direct question of is there any chance of the next 4 years of us having a foreign policy that doesn't directly align with APEC's interests? The odds of that are zero. On some level, we are going to align with Israel. APEC. And look, this is kind of a difficult subject because, again, I get to the point where Israel has a right to exist, but do they have the right to be a military aggressor the way that they are in Gaza and the way that they are in Lebanon and the pager thing? These are things that concern me deeply because the civilian cost and the blanket statements that we targeted terrorists without any real confirmation. These are crafty things, and God bless it if it was accurate that they did in fact successfully target terrorists. So, but APAC spends a lot of money. They're responsible for Jamal Bowman and there was another one, Corey, somebody that they're
Jamal
they
Bowman?
they
Oh,
cer-
right. They funded his opponent, right?
they funded their opponents. They made big noise. Like
Uh, yeah,
they
even though
they
like
spend
with
a lot of money. There's perverse
Jamal Bowman,
incentives.
Jamal Bowman's a putz. He was going to lose anyway, though.
You think so?
I do think so. I don't think we could chalk
I
that one all up to APAC. I think that people didn't like Jamal Bowman and his district changed.
sure.
Um,
Well, I
so
didn't like Jamal Bowman, that's for sure.
right. But like the district didn't like him either, especially like the way they redistrict him. So where he only had like a little bit of the Bronx left, and then I think like up into like Westchester County and stuff is where he ended up being. But
So
yeah,
the odds that we won't help Israel in the future, that we come up with a foreign policy that runs counter to APAC on some level, some of it makes sense, but
uh,
we will not. Like the parts of it that don't make sense, I think we're still going to be accepted, whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. We're
yeah. I
still
mean,
going to
like
be very
it's
pro-Israel. It's not, neither one of them is offering any kind of differentiation there.
no, right. I mean, if you want differentiation, you're gonna have to look at people like Chase Oliver and
Absolutely.
also people like Jill Stein too, who
Sure.
certainly has her own take as well. Um, again with the Israel thing, it's sort of messy because like the U.S. has at least the last like several years been sort of like weirdly antagonistic with Israel, where we want to use our resources to direct them in the way that we want.
Hmm.
And the Israeli government, it's kind of like, you're holding us back from just like cleaning house here. And by cleaning house, I mean killing a lot of people. Uh, and so in the minds of a lot of like Israelis, they're like, we wish the US would get out of our business.
Yeah.
And in the minds of a lot of US citizens at this point, most of us, I like a lot of people still like generally support Israel, but a lot of people are starting to get to the point where they're like, well, does it make sense for us to like to have our hands in all this, to spend all this money? Like, it's like people see like the APAC thing, like the Israelis controlling us. It's kind of the other way around, like where there's like this lobby to like send all this money to Israel in a way that Israel like needs, but also sort of resents.
All right, that's an interesting interpretation that I've never really gotten a take on before, and
Yeah.
I'm willing to explore it, and I'm more than willing to like. I could see that because we are very pro proxy war
Yeah.
situation. It's and so that to me is a very interesting point, and actually it kind of like excites me now. You've given me a new conspiracy to work on, Kevin. Do you see
Yeah,
what I
no,
mean? It's like
I'll send you some stuff. I'm trying to think of that. There's an author who's written a bunch about this. He was also a guest on like the Fifth Column podcast talking about this stuff, and I found some of it convincing. Now he's on the side of like he's aggressively pro-Israel and thinks that like Israel should be more aggressive in stopping like threats to like their country, right? Like that's his thing, and his whole thing is
Mhm.
like, and therefore the U.S. should butt out.
I got you. I got you. But it gives it a
So
whole different flip, right? Like we're actually there to help them be further our own proxy war ambitions, right? To
right. I mean,
further
like,
our
cause
own
like the
desire
US is
for.
trying to like we're trying to keep peace through bribery,
Mm.
basically. Like, okay, like we'll bribe Israel and we'll give them some money and then we'll make sure they don't go too far. And that's like what's going to keep the peace in the region. And then we're going to give Egypt some money. And we're going to give Jordan some money. And we're going to give Saudi Arabia some money. And
Well,
like
that's
it's just
the premise of the Abraham Accords, right? Like let's
yeah,
just give them
basically.
all money.
We're gonna give them all money, and we're gonna treat them all as allies, and that's going to ensure peace. And maybe it does, but I'm not really convinced that like bribing everyone with a bunch of money to build more weapons, and then also having the U.S. military in that region, and also like giving them the position to be able to antagonize Iran, while Iran also like that they're doing their own messing around. I don't want to like fully let them off the hook here.
Sure.
But like it makes conflict more likely given the assumption of the backing of U.S. military force in dealing with a conflict with Iran. And that's is the danger of actually spinning out into like a larger regional global conflict that the U.S. is going to be involved in again.
With nuclear bombs going off in certain theaters, if we're lucky, like
Yeah.
it only in certain theaters if we're lucky. Like we're running the risk
You don't
of
mean
a
like it's
full
lucky if that
scale.
happens. It's just lucky if it
Right,
doesn't spread.
right, correct. That's what yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I didn't say that right.
Yeah. I knew what you meant, but I want to make sure the audience knew what you meant.
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, so I mean, like, yeah, that's I see like Kamala and like Trump's been virtue signaling hard, like we gotta support Israel no matter what. Like, and the VP debate was also like very much like that. But like I've kind of taken a step back and I've started to say like I don't know that this is good for anyone. It's not good for the Israelis. It's not good for us. It's certainly not good for the Gazans or like. I mean, I don't care if it's good for Hezbollah. Screw those guys. But like the average people in Lebanon.
Yeah. It certainly isn't good for civilians in any one of those areas, and
Yeah.
like other than Israel seems to be doing a pretty good job of protecting their civilians. But if you're a civilian
Yeah.
in Gaza or you're a
Don't worry.
civilian in southern Lebanon right now, you are not safe. There's war going on all around you.
Yeah.
Our friend Patty has a pretty good comment.
And you know what? It's gonna have to wait until after the show because we are totally out of time and we've gone over, I think, every segment. But
All right.
thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution on WYSL. We appreciate y'all being here. If you want to hear what this comment was, you're gonna have to go find the podcast. Go find us on A Free Solution. All right. Have a great night, folks. Take care.
We're already an hour and 16. So we had a long conversation there in one of the breaks, and we must have ran over on one of the segments or two.
Both. Editing's gonna be great.
All right. Thank God you're a pro at this. So yeah, can't we all just get along? Rodney King was what a transformative figure, a guy that had gotten beat down by cops, sparked riots. Reginald Denny ended up getting assaulted to death in the middle of downtown Los Angeles as a result of this. And Rodney King was sad about these things. And yeah, can't we all just get along? But really, war just makes people mad at each other and it never ends. And that's the reality. When you kill somebody's family member, that axe doesn't get buried, man. That doesn't go away.
It ends up being a cycle of violence, and it's again, it ends up being revenge and revenge and revenge. Yeah, it stinks.
Here's another one, quick one, because we would probably want to get off the air. But how did we meet? Basically, Libertarian Party stuff. Kevin did a radio show. He reached out to me to offer me the opportunity because we have some overlapping areas. Senate District 51 was so absolutely massive that his radio show actually reached some parts of it. So he invited me on the show.
Especially, I think we were on like WENY at the time too, which also reached up into that district as well.
That's correct. And then so that was where Dr. Mark Legowski got on the radio and called me not a real libertarian. That was awesome. That was totally so cool.
Yeah, I think that was like one of the first shows I had you on.
Yeah, that was great.
It's a rite of passage, though.
Oh my God,
you felt legit after that, right? Like,
yeah, I totally felt legitimized because I was like, look, I'd burn the whole thing right to the ground, the whole system. But what we're talking about is a local problem where people were hoping for fiber optic broadband access, and they, it was being run out all over the place, and no end users ever got connected. You know what I mean? It was just absolutely bizarre. There was a local provider who could do the last mile connections for pennies on the dollar compared to what Spectrum would have run those fiber optic lines for. And so I was like, all right, well, let's figure out a way to save a lot of money. And I had a great idea, and just, and we were talking about it on the show. And so then after that, Kevin decided to kind of do less shows because it was 5 days a week then, right?
Yeah.
And Larry Larry kind of said, "Hey Tim, you know who would be a great fit for like Thursdays? You." And I'm like, wow, that was really complimentary. So I tried that for a while. And then you and I had such a freaking blast doing Fridays together that we had to keep it going, man.
Yep.
It was so much
That's a
fun.
good time. It's fun. And then I don't think we actually met in person until like last year. We've been doing this show for like a few years.
I was on my way up to the Nickel City Duels, wrestling fans, and decided to stay in Henrietta, a little south of Rochester. And Kevin and I got together for dinner, had a couple beers at a brew pub. I had a Rochester garbage plate, which gave me heartburn. I thought I was going to die. I was like,
I forgot the wording is spicy. My bad.
What the hell is this? It was wild, man.
Yeah.
Look at that. He's right. We've got some good numbers tonight, man. It's good stuff.
It's going up. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
Elon
Musk is not turning down the signal on truth tonight because normally he does.
Thanks, Elon. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
All right. But on that note, though, I think it is time to call it a night.
It is, brother.
Yep. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks for your comments. You guys rock. Always appreciate it. It's been a good time.
Yeah. Don't forget you can offer us support on Spotify. You can subscribe to our podcast. I think it's just a couple bucks a month, or you can choose your level of sponsorship.
Yeah. You do that too.
And then if there's other things you guys are interested in having Kevin and I do for you, let us know because we can work something out.
Yeah. All right.
For money. That's what I'm saying. So, but hit the like, share the podcast, and guys, the questions in the comments and the interaction is actually what it worked. Yeah. Marv is down there in Florida. It is what it's really all about. Money's secondary to what Kevin and I are offering you guys, but money wouldn't hurt.
No,
and any support at all. Just being here is awesome. So we appreciate all of you.
Yeah, right on. All right. Take care, folks. Have a good night.